there's a lot of things we want to talk about. And kind of the part that I'm interested in is having people really understand that it's not just about doing some protocol and just putting it out there. You can do a lot more for the space by actually making it easy for them to use this thing without them having to worry about making sure that the latest code base is running, or they can always get the upstream changes, or they need to know how to run this on your own. We shouldn't lose that part of building in the space. So maybe the first thing will be, like, let's kind of start with each of you. Give me a very concise two-line description of what your product is and what it does.
Sure, thanks. And GM everyone, I guess. We are building Push Protocol. Push Protocol is a decentralized communication middleware using which any protocol can send any sort of communication on-chain or off-chain, which is directly tied to their wallet address. And once that happens, because Push is a network, any crypto wallet or dApp can tap onto this network and can show the communication to the Web3 users, which are wallet address, thereby improving the UX at a massive scale.
Yeah, from our side at Spheron Network, we are trying to democratize the entire computing infrastructure. And what does that basically mean? That basically means, like, today, if you go to any of the chains today, most of the time you might be looking into their nodes running on some centralized servers. What we are trying to enable is make it much more easier for the companies or the app chains or the new things which are getting built into the ecosystem to use bare metals and a decentralized infrastructure on their day-to-day activities. And that is what we are enabling at Spheron in just few lines of a code and few clicks of a button.
Hey guys, yeah. So Biconomy is leveraging EIP 437 to build smart contract wallet as a service infra. That involves two parts: the account part, where we have our own smart contract wallets, and also the infra part that involves bundlers and paymasters.
Amazing. That was good and concise. I like it because it lets us ask you 10 more questions later. So maybe I'll start with Harsh. So you kind of chose communication as a category. It's a massive space. There's hundreds of ways people can communicate. There's already tons of services that offer different means of communication. What made you build and decide to kind of start Push?
Sure. So I think it was two things, Kartik. Like, one, we were at the right time, at the right idea, and at the right place. And the other thing was rage. Let me explain on that. I was trying this DeFi app. I took a loan. Then I went ahead doing my job. Volatile market, came back after a week. My loan was liquidated. And I was like, no way. This cannot happen. There needs to be some communication that I'm missing. And then that's when we realized that this is so nascent space that communication didn't exist, notification didn't exist. So that was the reason why Push was built. And yeah, now that DeFi protocol kind of uses Push, so full circle.
Now that's incredible. Okay. So losing money and then making sure that nobody else loses money is always a good solution to a problem. Prashant, you kind of talked about ways people can set up nodes. Maybe give us a slightly more deeper understanding of what you can do with Spheron and why would somebody use it, or when would they want to use this?
So I think every time they should be using Spheron. So
it's a good answer.
So that is something which we promote. But coming on the sideline on a very serious note, like when I started looking into this space, the one thing which I have seen is we call ourselves Web3 companies, but in reality, if you look at on the value derivation part, most of the Web3 companies getting the value out of Web3 and putting into Web2. And the foundational layer of that is the infrastructure part. And very few people were working around that. So there was infra which was getting built on DeFi side, notification services, and a lot of other things. But there was literally a base layer system which was missing out. And that is where we thought is like, why can't we go and bridge that gap? It's not like we are the first people who are doing it. There are companies, for example, Akash Network was one who has started that. There are other companies who have been started doing that. But the problem with all of them was they missed out few things and few aspects of it. Infra is not just about just giving out something or somebody leasing out your computer, right? Infra is about doing workloads, and workloads are different kinds. And most of the time, the people who pay for those workloads are the enterprises or the bigger companies, or even app chains and the nodes. You cannot run a node on your computer every day, right? It is going to screw up everything. And that is where we kind of realize is like, why can't we just go and fill that gap in by bringing the data center across the world, which are trusted data centers, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, and all of those audited data centers, and only allow that to happen and only allow users to kind of go and deploy and choose those data centers. And that is where it started filling the gap in. So from permissionless creation, the permissionless on the user side, permissioning the supply side from the dog basis structure which you are currently working on. So all of those things which we have done over the time. And now again, as you said, like why? If you are in Web3, you are making money in Web3. At least put that money back into the Web3 as such, so that the more you put it back, the more money we as a founders and we lot of builders into the space will get that money back to innovate into this space. And we thought the infra is the right place to be at, and that is why we started building it, Spheron.
I think reinvestment to kind of do more R&D is always a good strategy for any company. Doesn't matter if it's tech or crypto or otherwise. Maybe kind of to understand a bit more about Biconomy here, you kind of said you kind of make it easy for people to take advantage of 4337. What is that? Why does it matter? What can you do? And how does Biconomy help?
Definitely. I mean, like, there's a lot of buzz around AA for last, I think, almost 2 years. I think very few understand it properly. In fact, like, I think the main time that we spend on is that having like a new primitive for wallets, like that's where AA all comes in, and changing the mindset that, there shouldn't be just one wallet that should be used for all the applications, where the wallet should become like part of the app experience itself. So till now, like, I think there are like two kind of wallets that people are all familiar about. One is like custodial wallet. That's where like exchanges and all these places come in. Second is like more like EOAs, like MetaMask and all. That is definitely used more like a end user level personal wallet. But with smart contract wallets in AA, what we're trying to do is like how the wallet experience should become like more like a dApp experience itself, so that anyone who wants to use an application shouldn't just first use MetaMask and then use an application, where they can use like, applications that has wallet within the application itself. And I think two areas where we're seeing like most demand of it, in the social fi space, you must have seen like fintech and few companies where wallet experience becomes like part of the app experience itself, that leverages like, AA to make it like extremely seamless for people to like use applications. Also, like off late, like we're seeing like a lot of DeFi per platforms, you're leveraging smart accounts. So the general pitch is same, right? Like how we can have like an account for every application, and then like play around with the UX, right? How we can make it extremely simple. We can add like gas abstraction, we can add like biometric for transactions, we can do like sessions and all this kind of stuff. But the main objective for everyone is that changing the mindset to have accounts for like different applications, not just one wallet for every application out there.
Oh, amazing. Okay, so that's a good way to understand this thing. So you effectively let them have a wallet that is more of a contract, but it behaves like a normal wallet, so you can just enable a lot more interesting use cases in the future, especially as you kind of connect to multiple chains. Kind of coming back to the actual topic of this panel, which is around offering this infrastructure as a service, instead of just kind of letting people figure this out on their own. My kind of obvious kind of question here is, why consider doing a lot of this also in addition to building the protocol? Why should I not just use Twilio if I want to do push notifications? Why should I just not go run an instance on AWS? Why can't I just like not manage the wallet for somebody and just do normal HTTP requests to do all the transactions? What's the advantage here, or why does this matter for us to kind of offer this to the Web3 ecosystem? I'll kind of have anybody take on, or all of you should comment on.
Sure. So, I mean, one thing I would like to add over here, like there's this very good answer that people give that we are doing it for decentralization. I would like to add that it's not just about decentralization, like that's the ethos that we follow. But when we are talking about a billion users, right, we want to do things in a way where it benefits them, then using the Web2 apps. So, for example, for push, what we are doing is we are enabling Web3 native ways to chat and Web3 native ways to put notifications out. Like when you're interacting with a protocol, you are interacting with a wallet address. So therefore, you need those communications in that wallet address. And that cannot be done by Twilio. And that's where the Web3 services really shine. Even with group chat, like the token gating feature, that cannot be done with a normal thing. So I would say, like, if we are thinking about building on top of Web3 as an infrastructure, it needs to be something that follows the ethos with it, which is decentralization, but it needs to add enough things for the users or for the products to users.
On our side at Spheron, there are a lot of things which we like why people should be like using us. One is I come from infra background, so I have done my entire career. I have done infrastructure, and one thing which I've learned over the time is the moment you start using one infrastructure, and like that is how it has been designed, you get logged into that, and that is called vendor lock-in issues. And a lot of companies, if you might have seen in the past, either it is eBay or either it is recently there were a couple of more companies who moved out from cloud native services, and the only reason they moved out is because their $1 increment was paying them around 10 millions or hundreds of millions of dollars in the loss in their profit margin. And that is the place where we started building around. And Web3 enables it from the day one. The optionality of the Web3 part where you integrate, go and work with a lot of data centers, build certain a very good layer of system where you are not vendor locked in with any of the specific cloud services. You have an option to switch. And that is where we kind of started focusing on, and we saw like that is a great opportunity to be tapping into, and that is one of the reasons like people should be using it. Apart from that, the moment you go to decentralization, there are two more major factors which we always also get out of the box. And we generally don't talk about it. The one is called the cost benefit. The reason being because let's say I am running my sandbox environment. Is it necessary for me to run that sandbox environment in US, or is it necessary to run it in Europe and different regions? It might not, because that doesn't even have a user data. So I can run that sandbox environment in the place where it is much more cheaper. But since you are already logged into the vendor, you can't switch it very easily, right? And that is where you also get one more optionality to go and switch to the nearest location of the data center, which is much more cheaper for you. And you get a cost benefit. And since it's a direct bare metals, you get additional advantage. Like I can bet, like it is 60%, 70%, even 40% cheaper than any centralized cloud providers. The third and the most important part, the reason it can be only built on Web3 is the payment settlement layer. If you have to, it's not like in Web2 people have not tried it. They have, like we have done tons of research around it. We found this solution. If you guys know one of the companies, one of the greatest leading companies, we also inspire them a lot. They have done it. But the problem with them was at the initial scale of the time was the settlement layer around them on the fiat side. So if you're operating in India, you have to settle in Indian currencies and you have to open an entity here. You have to do tons of different things here to make sure that happens. Now, the moment you go to the Web3 way, now you have only one settlement layer, which is a blockchain, right? You go and settle your transaction there, and then you offload with some off-chain kind of a off-ramp or non-ramp. You do all of those things on the sideline, but your protocol doesn't get impacted with that. And that becomes the much more beneficial part for us to go and enable it. And that is where we thought is like Web3 can solve it at scale, which Web2 cannot. And that is where we started building Spheron.
That's an incredible answer. Like you listed every possible thing that gives you an advantage in this space. Maybe Aniket can top this. We'll see.
Yeah, I can just add to it. I think for us it's a bit of simple pitch. Like and there's some sort of PMA for dApps, right? Like we all seeing dApp developers building dApps in the ecosystem. I think every dApp is struggling for users. Like no one's getting any users. Call it like XYZ reasons, but I think one of the major reasons that we found out was UX. That UX is like really shitty. It's still shitty, right? And we're like, okay, how do we improve it? How do we make it even better so that people can use all these applications? So that's where we come in. We make sure that all these become simple and more users can come to decentralized applications. I can go more specific to it as well. Like I've been spending a lot of time with like perp applications these days, and we've all seen like last year what centralized exchanges can lead to, right, with FTX and all this, and that led to like a lot of on-chain perp platforms emerged, right? Last year was we seen GMX, like Evo, all these guys kind of heading the market, and I think for them it was very clear. Like I talked to all of them that how they can give like a balanced experience on chain, like without compromising on user funds, and also at the same time like make it non-custodial. And smart account wallets like make it extremely easy to make it happen. So major perp platforms are trying to use us to give like a more centralized kind of an experience on their decentralized applications. So that's where we come in. We make sure that we have better UX. People are not feeling or not shying away from the complexities of the application or the seed phases and all this kind of stuff, and made like a more sex-like experience. So that's where we come in.
Amazing. I mean, if I were to summarize, you have a lot more freedom and you have less situations where you're locked into a vendor, which is kind of, you have that with more big cloud providers. And of course, kind of summarizing Harsh's point, you want something that understands the context of what's new here. So interfacing with a web service is not the same as understanding a smart contract, and you want some native experiences that have that built in so that you get to do a lot more new things instead of just replicating the old ones. let's kind of talk about some challenges. What's been kind of the hardest thing you've had to do so far running your companies? Maybe I'll start with Harsh.
All right. So, I mean, running the company as an early stage hackathon project and as a founder is completely different. When you are early stage founder, you think that you can do everything, and you might be good in doing everything, but you will not be there at every point of time. You cannot be there at marketing and handle tech and everything else. So I think the hardest challenge for us was hiring the right team. And I think that's there for all the startup. But yeah, once you hire that, that's where the actual scalability part of the startup starts. So I would say hiring the right team, that's a challenge. Figuring out what to do at what point of time, that's also a challenge. And one more thing, like as the startup grows, you will have to unlearn a lot of things and relearn how to do it, because at that point of time, you might be after community. And then at one point of time, you want to go after scalability. So every time you have to unlearn and relearn. I think those are some of the challenges.
Nice. Maybe I'll push you more to be also be more on the technical side. So what about the protocol itself? What about offering this as a service? What are some challenges that you end up facing, or harder things you have to solve for that?
For sure. So, of course, decentralization, that's the biggest challenge I think everyone faces. With Push, the thing was, this is a real-time communication network, right? So everything has to be near instant. And that is something that was very challenging for us. I mean, I always take decentralization as two-step process. One is content cannot be changed, immutable, which Push was when we began. And then the other is content cannot be censored, which means that no matter what content is there, people should be able to pick it up. No node can censor it. And that took us a lot of time to solve. But after 2.5 years, we are finally ready. So notifications, decentralized, they are coming. They might be out in mid-December, or because we want team members to enjoy their holiday, so maybe mid-January. But yeah, that was the most challenging part and the most exciting part as well.
Amazing. And what about you?
For us, a lot of challenges. So one of the challenge was, again, the finding the right talent, because infra space, you rarely find people building into infra, to be very honest. Like, and to build an infra, you need a very deep expertise in a lot of other places. It's not like you just wake up tomorrow and then you go and learn one thing and you build it. It has DevOps, it has networking, it has low-level networking, it has high-level. I don't know like how many networkings are there itself. So that was one of the challenges which we had to face. But initially, I and my co-founder kind of built it, all of those base, so that was kind of solved. But we still face that challenges. So if anyone is very good infra developer here, please reach out to us. The second part which we kind of face on the challenge side is convincing people about and also letting them know there's an issue called vendor lock-in. Because a lot of time we thrive and survive as initially startup founders over credits. So you might have heard a lot of credits. I have got 100,000 credits. I have got 200,000 credits. But we are startups. We can't give you those much credits, right? If we start giving you, then I think I have to find some other job to kind of do and feed you guys, right? So for me, that was the problem. And we try to solve it in a very different way. We said like, we are optimizing your DevOps code. But again, that was our biggest challenge. Even as of now, still a lot of founders comes to us and they say like, you know what? If you guys don't give us a credit, we don't work with you. Then we tell them it's like, once your credit is over, then you should definitely come back to us. But that is where the second challenge. The third and the most one, which we are currently working on, is the building the community around it. Because the moment you start building the protocol or network and all of those things, you have to ensure is like there is a proper decentralization in the place by enabling everything on the community angle as well. And infra community, just name some infra communities. You will not find a lot, only few. And because it's very tough to understand, it make people understand like a 5-year-old kid, because you can't, because infra, you cannot explain a 5-year-old kid. You have to be mature enough to kind of understand. And that is where we end up in facing a lot of problems, but we are still trying to figure out in different ways, educating from the bottom layer. We're trying to build some education materials, doing a lot of other things, but still, that is still a problem for us. And we are still working on to solve it at scale.
It's a very honest answer. Appreciate it.
Probably going to categorize into like two parts. One is like founder level challenges, like Now there's like product level challenges, what we face and still facing, right? I think with founder level, I feel like setting the right culture in the team is like really important. I mean, I know like hiring is definitely important, but this industry is like still very new, right? Like you don't have like 15 years experience people. Everyone is still learning. So getting the people and also just, educating them in Web2 and making them Web3 savvy. We spend like a lot of time on that. Just make sure that, the culture is there and it's always, it also needs to get evolved, right? Like, every time like there's something new happening. So we have to make sure that, the culture is very Web3 savvy in the team. Second is like also, this industry is like very narrative driven, right? So there's every day you see like bunch of narratives out there, So filtering all the noise out there and just focusing on what you're trying to do is like really important. It becomes challenging, as a founder that, you see like, different projects, working on different things. You
There's a lot of distractions.
hear all the noise from investors that, okay, why do you do FHE? Why do you do this, all this kind of stuff? So just being very honest, just to focusing on, that probably is the North Star for us and just be heads down and building on it. It becomes a challenge. Next, when it comes to product level stuff, right? Again, like, with smart contract wallets, it's still getting standardized, right? Like 437 is like one standard of creating smart contract wallet. So there's no like benchmarks there that, okay, what need to be followed, what not need to be followed. So we just like, of course, making sure that this becomes sort of a standard in the industry that how people should use wallets. In that, like we're still facing challenges, then it's still expensive, right? Every wallet needs to deploy, like there's a cost involved in it, how we can reduce that cost, AA on Ethereum is very different than AA on ZK Sync, right? AA on ZK Sync is very different from Optimism. How do you standardize, different 437 stack all together across all different EVM chains? So all these challenges are still there, but we're kind of taking like a step-by-step approach. Like we started off with a small tool like Gasless and then evolve into like a smart contract wallet. And then also in there, like focusing on a specific niche. Once like we win there, like we probably going to expand to other things. So pretty step-by-step approach over there.
No, incredible. I'll leave a couple more questions, but one thing I'm kind of, you sort of answered this in your answer a few minutes ago, but maybe it's worth kind of calling out directly. Are there newer business models that exist now with offering these types of things as services, but for more decentralized world? Or are we going to go back to a SaaS model where you just kind of put your credit card, it's just that you're going to figure out the token stuff on someone's behalf? How does that business change?
We are still exploring a lot. So to be very honest, so there is no business model which we have analyzed at Spheron. On the protocol layer, yes, there are a lot of other ways to kind of figure it out because protocol has already seen that. On the user perspective, there is a terminology which I have learned over the time is there's something called muscle memory. And muscle memory is like we are used to of attaching our credit card even if we ask you or not. You are used to of putting your CVV even if we ask you or not. So it's already fitted into our memory. So in order to drive the adoption slowly, we have to go with the traditional route. Is asking people to go and attach your credit card and debit card, right? And by putting on-ramp and off-ramp into it and making sure it's like they are getting into the system. Now, once they are into the system, then as a founders and as a company, we have to figure it out how we can move them slowly more towards wallet-based payment model. And that is where I think what Aniket and team is doing is amazing job there. And we can use a lot of account abstraction and all of those things to abstract out the complexity of even installing a wallet, right, directly. But you can embed the wallet directly into the protocol layer so that your user don't even care about all of those things anymore. So that is where we are kind of looking at, but still we are also figuring out to be like on the right side. But I'm very highly inclined toward making the model work in the more traditional and business oriented way versus going in a more Web3 way where you, for everything, you just have to attach your wallet. Nobody does it, right? I don't do it. So how can I expect people to do it? So that is what I incline myself toward.
So I think there are some new models that are coming out. Like one thing I really am fascinated about is micropayments or streaming. If Superfluid is around, shout out to them. But yeah, that's quite new because that is something that never existed. And I have always fantasized, like, I don't watch Netflix a lot, but maybe 1 or 2 hours. So why pay them monthly? And that is where streaming might be really, really cool. Then another thing is staking, which is you are not spending, but you're locking your tokens. And based on that, you're getting the service, which benefits the network. It secures the network. And it kind of works that cannot work in Web2. So I would say like those 2 things are quite fascinating, still in the early stage, but yeah.
Amazing. So maybe I guess for my last question, we obviously covered what each of you do, but what are some other infrastructure services that you think should exist or don't exist in the right kind of level of quality that you would want? What's kind of missing that makes a developer's or a founder's life a lot easier?
Yeah, I think one thing I really want to see, and I'm spending a lot of time, is like, I think we should have better explorers.
So better block explorers?
Yeah.
Okay.
I want block explorer to be like my Twitter, right? Like right now people just spend a lot of time on Twitter. Just like, getting all opinionated about all these things. But I think the beauty of crypto is that everything is on chain, like there's a lot of data that can be abstracted. And, we can create like better ways of, looking at all these data. If you look to like a non-technical founder, people get, like really scared by using Etherscan, right? Like they don't understand everything that's happening there. So, I feel like we should have better explorers and, like we should be spending a lot of time just looking at data regarding what's happening. We can have like different, social aspect to it. We can have different aspect in general of how people look at data. But this is an area where we see like, a lot of, I personally am like quite bullish on and probably going to see like a lot of them the next year or two. And then very specific to what we are doing at Biconomy AA, I think like better standards around like bundlers are needed and paymasters also needed. Like entire like gas abstraction thing is still very complicated. We can have like a globalized, like paymaster that can probably like abstract away all the gas. And like we can work very directly with the protocols out there. So it's very Biconomy specific, but industry specific, I think explorers, I'm looking at.
Just to add to it, like there was this conversation I had with Aniket back in 2020 when we were discussing like what infra can be. And we were talking account abstraction, we talked about communication, and right now it's a reality. So I'm just fascinated what can come next. I think verification or on-chain identity is something that still needs to come, and reputation is something that might be good to have. But what I would say is we are getting there as infrastructure. We need to realize like when we are going to YouTube or Gmail or whatever, we are using storage, we are using sign-in by Google, we are using notification and other form of communication. And that is getting a reality in Web3. So we are inching closer. Prashant, you want to add?
I'm much more, so you have already covered that little part of it, but let me just name that. So that is in the space of DePIN, which has been very trending in the market. And I'm very excited about it because past 3 years, we haven't kept on building and nobody was talking about us. Now suddenly everyone is talking about us. So that feels good in Web3.
Good things take time.
So that is something which I'm very excited about and want to see more and more founders building into that space, because that space still has to mature and all the foundation has to go from there. And that is where my interest is inclined toward.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank all three of you for an amazing conversation. Hopefully you also get some insight into using a lot of these services and not doing everything on your own. So please give a massive round of applause for Harsh, Prashant, and Aniket.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, everyone.
All right.